So, our programming is brought to you by PhotoWings, so make sure to check their website. Today we have few people to host and to talk about particular body of work that just came out. So today with us we have, in no particular order, we have Ed Kashi, our dear friend and colleague from Seven. We also have Brenda Bingham and Michael Curry. So unlike many previous book clubs that we've done, this time we actually have the entire team, the entire motley crew who put this book together. Because we have more people, I'm not going to be taking too much of your time, so I'm going to hand it over to Brenda to talk about the Cali Years and how we got to see this gorgeous body of work. Brenda, the digital floor is yours, and I will be jumping in as much as I can.
Thank you, Ziyah. I'm going to hand it over to Ed to start, actually.
Right. So I'm going to start, and then Brenda and Mike will take over. But well, welcome everyone, and Ziyah, thank you so much, and David Campbell and folks at Seven Insider. So this is a very exciting new project that we have developed, and we being Mike, Brenda, and myself. So when I graduated from university way back in 1979, I was a New York boy, and I decided we don't have to go into it now, but to move to California. I basically wanted to get away from New York. I felt that if I was actually going to be able to make the life I imagined I'd make as a photojournalist and a documentary photographer, that I didn't want to go back to the place I came from. I wanted to sort of expand my horizons. And so I moved to a place where I knew no one, and I had never been there before, but just kind of dove in. And so then, 25 years later in 2004, I'm a family man. We have 2 kids, and, I'm married, and, my career thankfully had taken off and done quite well. We moved back to the East Coast to take care of my wife's father. So a year or two ago, decided to kind of look at this period of time, this 25-year period of my life, which is kind of like a lifetime, and look at what are the photographs that I made during that time. I did so many assignments. My God, in the 80s and 90s, I was literally doing 10 to 15 magazine assignments a week, which sounds horrifying now, but back then it was very exciting. And but I also worked on personal projects. I got to photograph famous people, even though that's not something that I am known for, nor was I actually interested in. So this book, The Cali Years, is really an amalgam or a compilation of images, of all these different kinds of images, including pictures of my family. And so anyway, but I'll stop for now. I'd like Brenda and Mike to introduce themselves, and then we have some stuff to share with you.
Can I just interrupt briefly and just say to everyone that I think there are a few copies left of the book. I just share people for everyone link to the book, to the publication, should you decide to get your own copy. And also, if you have any questions, anyone, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom application, and feel free to ask anything, and I'll convey the messages to Brenda, Ed, and Michael. Sorry, Brenda.
No, thanks, you. We appreciate the plug there. Yeah, we're running low on copies already, so thank you. I'm Brenda. I've been working with Ed as a creative director for the studio for about 5 years, and we've worked on tons of projects together. This is my second book project with Ed and Mike. The first is Abandoned Moments, which also just came out. We can plug that a little bit later, but yeah, this was a really exciting project to work on. A total stray from the norm for Ed especially, and also for all of us. So we had a ton of fun with this. And yeah, I guess we started about a year
maybe
ago,
2 years ago. Yeah,
planting the initial seeds.
Hi guys.
That was a very humble introduction. Brenda is a like massively multi-talented person.
Backbone. Hi
Mike.
guys. I'm Mike Curry. I've been working with Ed for a long time, 15 years. We've done 6 books together, tons of exhibits. I handle everything on the digital side. So retouching, printing, processing, managing, all the digital fun. And love to get into how we made this thing. So I guess we should get started.
Cool.
All right.
So I'm going to share my screen, and we have a couple visuals to show all of you guys. Okay. Mike or Ziyah, can you just give me a thumbs up that you can see? Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
Sharing.
most of you have seen this picture already when you signed up for this book talk. This is sort of our product shot. So you can see sort of a physical copy. Yeah, so the California Years started, I guess, a year ago. It was just something that had been in Ed's head for a while. Just sort of this title was like really like bugging him, and it just kept like knocking on his brain. He couldn't get out of his head. And initially, I think you talked about doing some sort of book project.
Yeah.
And we, we had some reservations. We had this other book that was coming out, Abandoned Moments. We didn't necessarily want to go through the process of like finding a publisher. And I think for Mike and I, we both felt like the link was this one place. It was a state. It was a period of time, but there wasn't necessarily like a thread. There wasn't a theme. It felt really just sort of this like disparate, massive group of images. There wasn't any cohesion. So we had our reservations about it, but we did start looking through our archives, and we started doing an edit. And we ended up deciding that we would just do like a months long Instagram campaign. So this was just about a year ago. This was the very first image that we shared. And we just sort of like launched it as this series that we called the California Years, right? That was the title that we had. This is a picture of Ed's kids. And we posted this last year on Ed's birthday. And yeah, so that was the first one. And it was sort of just this like experiment, this like loose thing that we wanted to start. And if you wanted to talk about sort of like the chapters that we had broken the images down into.
Yeah, and also this is a real departure for us, because most of the work I've done and the work we try to not just so much promote, but to disseminate out in the world is, very serious, issue oriented, journalistic or documentary in nature. And so, as we were saying earlier before we came on, sometimes it's so wonderful to play and to experiment and try to have fun, so that not everything we do is so serious. And maybe that's an effect of the pandemic, I don't know. But anyway, so that was the genesis of this. And and then this idea of like, how do we edit 25 years of work? Where do you begin? And with any project, it's about creating not dogma, but kind of boundaries, like guardrails. So in this case, we start with a 25-year period, and then only photographs that were made in the state of California. And then we took it from there. And of course, I couldn't have done this without Brenda and Mike. I mean, I as someone who mentors and teaches a lot, I've learned that photographers are often their own worst editors. And so I am blessed to have 2 amazing people to help me edit my work.
Well, we had a lot of fun editing this because, it's not work that we've like dove into. I mean, they're the long-term projects that I'm sure a lot of you have seen if you're familiar with Ed's work, like especially Aging in America. There's plenty of that in here. But there were pictures of like random celebrities we'd never seen. There's a multiple shoots of Steve Jobs, and just it feels so 80s. Like it really has this dated quality that's really exciting and fun for us. So we had a good time putting this together. We aligned with holidays, and there were a lot of celebrities in here, so we aligned with like their birthdays and their death days, and so that was really fun. We just wanted to show the very first post, and then we ended in July. And And this is a screenshot of 8 of 9 of these are part of the California Years. So I just mentioned Aging in America. You can see a few of those here. And I'm sure everyone recognizes Robin Williams. That was on his, I think, birthday in July. We posted that. David Hockney at the bottom right, and then Oliver Stone, top left. So this is where we ended the campaigns, an odd word for it. But yeah, it lasted about 8 months or so.
Yeah, about 8 months. And actually, when I photographed made the picture of Robin Williams, which is in his Napa Valley ranch, this was like early 80s. I was sent by the LA Times, Los Angeles Times. I didn't, I was just a kid, 23, 24 years old. And I'll never forget, his TV show, Mork and Mindy, had been canceled. So he looked at me and he said, "Do you know anywhere where I can find a job where I make $50,000 a week?" And I was like, okay, that's cool. Anyway, but so carry on.
So we just had so much fun sharing the Instagram. Again, we didn't take it too seriously. I think that's why we enjoyed it so much. And then we ended up feeling like there was a really positive response after sharing this. So we kind of came back to the discussion of maybe this is something we can do in a physical, tangible object. So we went back to the archives. You can see Huey Lewis in the top left.
Very 80s.
Very 80s. And we just started like whittling down. And again, we had this limit. We had this 25-year period, 1979 to 2004, state of California.
Oh, and then we kind of came up with this, in a sense, sort of 4, what would you call it? Like wells of images. One
4-pronged approach.
Yes, exactly, right. One is like family photos, one is celebrities and famous people. Then the other was culling from the personal projects that I did, where I actually photographed at least part of it in California. And then, of course, the assignment work. And that was again, in terms of editing, the guiding principle is let's look for not only the best images in those 4 areas, but to make sure that it encompassed the kind of breadth of all the amazing experiences that I got to have. And anyone who's joined us here today who is a photographer or has lived any bit of the photographic life, I mean, that's one of the blessings. It's one of the beautiful things of being a photographer, is that we get to see so much and we get to learn so much. We get to meet people. And so I like to believe that the Cali Years is a kind of beautiful compilation of these sort of 4 different areas of my experiences in those 25 years.
Yeah.
May I just ask, at the beginning you said that you sort of consciously decided not to pursue editors or publishing houses and so on, so it's sort of self-made project. I mean, I can understand why, but I'm sure some people in the audience might wonder, why did you decide on that approach?
That's a good question. I think maybe because unless Brenda, you have a good answer. No, I think it maybe was just that, sometimes, and this is something else I have learned over the years, like in pursuing personal projects or like stories that I want to do, is that, and this is a really important lesson, is sometimes when we try to get the affirmation, support, permission from other, whether it's editors, publishers, curators, it can kill our drive to move forward with it. And that is nothing against those folks, because without those folks, we would be lost on some level. But there are times in life where I have a project in mind and I'm just gonna goddamn do it. And I don't want to ask for permission from anybody, because then what happens is you might have a wonderful idea and then just you could take one sort of negative voice that snuffs out the inspiration. So it was really about avoiding, I guess, rejection, negativity, like the apparatus of the profession, if you like. And again, there's just times where it's like, I have something to say and I'm just going to say it, and let the chips fall where they may. And this was an example of that.
Yeah. I also think there's...
And while Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I think that, to be totally transparent, like, we didn't really know what our plan was. It was really organic, this process of like, well, I guess maybe we could make something physical. I don't know, maybe it'll be small. Like, we just kind of took it step by step. We didn't even have a vision for it. And we just kind of like every week kind of sat together and and felt it evolving and kind of bounced ideas off of each other.
I think it too is like using our skills. You know, we were together and we all could make a book. You know, we had all the skills needed to put a book together, and we could do it fast in-house. We had it all there. So it's why not? You know, if you can make it, why wait? Just create it now. And
so just to follow up on what Brenda said, you wanted to make something physical. I ask everyone, why do we even bother making books, making something physical in an old digital world? It may sound like a naive question, but I always like to hear what people have to say about it. So, you know, why going through this tedious process, expensive as well, when, for example, in your case, Ed, you have a massive readership on Instagram. So, you know, like, why would you bother with the print?
Because we're romantic fools.
I'll buy it.
That's true.
I'm just curious.
And also, I mean, you know, truthfully, I'm in a really privileged, fortunate position, seriously, to have Michael Curry and Brenda Bingham, to work with them. As Mike said, we have all the skill set that is required to produce things, you know. And so there are just times where it's sort of, I don't know, it's what makes you feel alive to create and to problem solve and to do that with folks who you love and you work well with. To me, that's like nirvana. Now, obviously, the financial part is not nirvana, FYI. But I just wanted to kind of not let that get in the way in this case. All right.
Oh, Ziyah, you're muted.
Yeah. So there's a question, and I think it's inappropriate since we're looking at your Lightbox. So there's a question from Jonathan who says, how did you edit down from 2,870 pictures as we see on in your Lightroom Lightbox? Did you print it, or how did you edit?
Actually,
excellent. Thank you so much for your question. You're guiding us right into our presentation.
He's a
but
plant.
Seriously, we appreciate that, because the edit I edit together all the time. All three of us do, and we have like a sort of symbiotic thing. We use these color labels in Lightroom, and we just kind of like go with our instinct. But we also have found that if we have an instinct one day, the next day we're going to have a different one. So it really helps for us to like keep returning, and then the images that maintain consistent for us kind of are the ones that ring true. But thank you for your question, because here's a picture of our studio. Yeah, we started editing down. I can't remember how many we ended up deciding to print, but like
hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds of basically index sized or business card sized prints that this is like a third of them that we just laid out in our studio. We all work, this kind of goes hand in hand with that question that you had asked, Ziyah, too, like why did we make a book? Like we love, the three of us, physical, tangible objects. We're all total book nerds, and it's a personal experience. Like we need to kind of feel it. We worked on a multimedia projection project that, you know, we've exhibited over the last 2 years. We started out in this exact same way.
Right.
We printed literally thousands of prints, and they were like splayed out across our studio.
Yeah. And that the project that Brenda's referring to is the Enigma Room. Which was a completely different immersive audio visual experience, but it kind of, I think, primed us for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers that question kind of vaguely, but yeah, this is how we started. We just started printing, and it was just easier to kind of play and make these connections, because that was what we were trying to find, was besides California and these 25 years, where are the other connections? And this is how we, you know, sort of physically played with these. And we realized that we had way too many to make a small zine, because that was sort of our initial, I don't think we mentioned that. We wanted to make something sort of like magazine, like this sort of like punk idea that you could just kind of hand it out. It's really cheap to produce, you know, and then we realized there was just too much preciousness here. So this is the original cover that we put together. Once we were laying out all these images, you can kind of see in the top left, like we just kept coming back to this image as the cover.
Right, and it ended up, I love when this happens, because it wasn't a conscious decision or realization. It was only afterwards, where this is a cover image, is a metaphor for really what I did in my life, which was just dive in and move across this vast country, not knowing anybody, having never been there. And thank goodness I did, because my life is much richer because I took that risk and I dove in. So it was great to see, it was great afterwards. It was like, wow, that picture actually, not only do we love it as an image, but it's a perfect metaphor for my California years.
Yeah, absolutely. And so at this point, we were like just starting to get the images together. We had no idea what we were building. And then we received that, if you want to show this.
Yes, and so I don't know if Leonardo Corrado or Trey Horvath is here, but these are guys who were in, I think it was the Warsaw, Poland 7 masterclass that was produced by Maciek Naberdalek and Stefano De Luigi, two really good, wonderful people and close comrades in 7. Anyway, and so Trey and Leonardo were in our workshop, and then they produced the book. I might, hopefully it's not too blurry, but the idea is they sent me this, and it was this sort of fold out. And then Brenda and I and Mike looked at it and we were like, ooh, we like this, nice idea. So isn't it cool that we were actually inspired by folks who we had mentored? I love that cycle, right? And anyway, so from there, we then built on it.
Yeah, handed it over to you, Mike.
While we are still about the editing, there's some follow-up questions. So someone is asking, is like these 2,800 and something pictures, is that was that like a first cut, or what is that?
Okay.
That Lightbox that we just saw.
So, okay, not to nerd out too much here, but
Please do. That's why we're here.
Well,
We all love it. Yeah.
and this is really important, folks. I mean, again, especially for folks, even if you're not a serious photographer, anyone who is generating or creating a lot of images, especially digital images, and not just, but anyway, you need to organize them. And so I'm so fortunate that from early on in my career, I created a very rigorous and thankfully stable structure for my archive, so that, this is now, well, including Abandoned Moments and Cali Years, my last 4 books now have been derived from my archive, because we were able to go into, 45,000 images and be able to sort of slice into it or vector into it with certain themes or certain issues. And but to answer your question, because my archive is very organized, it was easy to just basically put, California as a search tool, and then whatever we got, 3,000 images, and then we sort of, edit down from there. Did that answer the question?
I think so, absolutely. And while you're there, I have to ask this now that I keep asking questions from people. So what is the audience, if you know, for this book, and in generally for photo books that you made? That's the question from Ted. Is it primarily photographers buying photo books, or it is a wider, diverse audience?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So just for those who might not realize it, the average print run of photo books, great photo books, apart from the, Above Paris or, the real like coffee table books or the Day in the Life books when they were in their day. And those sold, well, one of the Day in the Life books, I think, sold more than 1 million copies, which is unheard of for a photo book. But the average run, like the great photographers that you might all love and follow, is probably about 2,000 copies, So one has to understand, when you approach photo book publishing, either as a creator or a consumer, that in some ways it's not precious, but it's not a mass market item. All right. So these are really labor of loves. That's how I see it. But more importantly, as an author, this is my maybe only chance to lay it down exactly as I see it or as I want it to be, with no gatekeeper other than people, editors or designers along the way who, hopefully make it better, see things that I might not see, weaknesses, strengths, so forth and so on. So anyway, so that's kind of I think I answered the question, but or tell me, come at me again if I didn't. But yeah.
Cool. Sorry. Keep going,
All right.
Brenda.
Well, I'm gonna
Thank you,
hand it-
Ziyah. These are great questions.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna hand it over to Mike because at this point, once we received this, this kind of got our wheels turning about, okay, what the hell are we doing? Like,
Yeah, what
how
are
are
we
we gonna
making?
physically make this?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we have too many pictures for a zine.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And those were all concerns. And when we originally thought we were going to print this whole book in house, and the thought was we have a closet full of paper. With years of doing photo exhibits, it's busting. And you finish a roll, you finish an exhibit, and you have a quarter of a roll left. What are you going to do? You throw it in the closet. So we wanted to reuse all this and actually make a book, something beautiful out of this closet of paper that we had laying on the side. So that and an Epson printer, we just went into the back room and kind of went nuts. And it looked like we had a ton, but it disappeared pretty fast because we experimented a lot. All different types of paper, all different coatings, printing double-sided, gluing things together. We went all over the place with it. Just we had the time and we had the openness just to make something interesting. And we originally thought the whole book was going to be printed double-sided, zine style on this printer. We were going to feed them in one by one. Zines are kind of different than books because usually who created the work has touched it. You see the fingerprints all over them. They're personal, and that was the whole idea behind it. But the reality came knocking, and like after a while, we realized we're only going to physically be able to make part of this. We can't dedicate our whole lives to sitting in this back room and printing. So we came on, the handmade part would be the cover. The inner printing for image quality and just ease of stapling and putting it all together, we would get printed at a print shop and take these 3 books and put them in a packaging, in a housing, something that was a major design element that would feed itself through all 3 books inside. And that was really this thought. Let's just make different versions over and over, fail until we get the perfect one. And that's kind of how we came on what we have. I think we have some more pictures, right, that we can show how we were making it.
totally. I wanted to just show the little mock-up that we had made, and then we'll show some like behind the scenes images of our process. But exactly what Mike had said, we really wanted to do something physical, but we weren't gonna make we couldn't do everything in house basically. So we had, I don't know if you can see, this is our little mock-up. You can see that cover image. This is like a index card mock-up, and it opens up similar to the book that Ed had just showed. I know it's really bright. And then we kind of decided on this layout, that it would be this fold out book, and we would have 3 zines connected, the Cali Years. And then another component, kind of going back to this idea of wanting something physical, we were really excited about like archival elements, like what else do we have besides the images from California? And then Ed remembered that he had his driver's licenses from the 80s, so we thought we would include these for your viewing pleasure. This is from 1982. So he had found these, and we really, really wanted to figure out a way to include them. Right? I mean, they're just
Now I know your middle name, Ezra.
There you go. Right.
Yeah, and
One of my favorite names. I had no idea.
And that name can get me in trouble in certain places in the world.
True.
But and I have to say, like in general, I'm not comfortable projecting myself in my work, because that's just not how I think about work. It's not about me. But in this case, it just seemed so apropos. And also, I think we love the design element of like California, like even the color scheme of the California driver license. And you get a tour through my different hairstyles, which are mostly pretty scary. So,
well, I'm holding on this because this is my personal favorite. But yeah, so this was just like extra elements that we had to work with, right? We were just like looking for anything and everything. We wanted to get really fun. We wanted to have a good time with this. So these are just some of the licenses, and then this is just an image of sort of how I have the book here too. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of how we ended up using them. We had played with a bunch of different ideas, and we ended up collaging them here, and it definitely played into our color palette for the book. So just to sort of get out of Lightroom for a second here, I wanted to pull up InDesign is the program that we were using to build out the zine. And at this point, we just started like running with it. We were like, we have hundreds of images, let's just start building something. And we kind of went back and forth between editing down and building it out and seeing what was working. So I built out like 5 different versions in InDesign, and they started out really sleek. I'm just gonna sort of quickly scan through here. And
Would
you
you
can see
mind,
that
sorry, Brenda, would you mind doing full screen in InDesign?
Sure.
Just because it's kind of small. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So I started out like really sort of sleek. This is very basic. The pages are pretty symmetrical. They're going to be, the images will be fuzzy because the images aren't linked in InDesign here, but just to give you an idea, it's a lot simpler.
Like a more formal presentation.
And I wasn't sure how Mike and Ed would react, but I was starting to experiment and adding in like pops of color and just playing in ways that I hadn't before, kind of feeling more collagey. This is not an example of that. I just wanted to show you quickly like kind of the first run. And they progressively got like funkier and funkier. And I was really happy to hear that they were excited about it. So we just ran with it. This was one version of how we handled the licenses in the beginning. And we knew that that was the sort of flap opening, right? These are like crazy sketches that we had put together. And yeah, we were just playing with color and shapes.
And it was interesting because I think they had to nudge me in this direction because this is also about letting go of how can I put it? Not the obsession with presentation of photographs, but sort of seeing a book as a whole, that photographs are one component, and that if we were going to make this a bit more playful, which at some point we just made the decision to do that, as opposed to being formal, and there's nothing wrong with formal and elegant, but that we should really go for it. And Brenda went for it.
Yeah, I went for it. So I'll come back here. And this is how we ended up deciding how the inside covers would work. You know, at this point we had established we're going to make a cover, and our state was like, we'll figure that out when we get there. We're not going to even like approach the cover yet, but we knew that once it folded out, we wanted it to look like this. And these lines ended up having this sort of like mountainous quality, and like these colors are sort of like bright poppy California. You know, we just had this like West Coast idea in our head. And also there was still, at least for me when I was building this out, like the images they still had this sort of disparate quality to them. And so it ended up, the color and the graphic design element ended up kind of being that like connective thread.
Yeah.
Yeah. And fun fact, I was really happy when I realized this, but in our original mock-up, like the Post-it colors ended up being like the same colors that we went for in the final design. So that's just a weird coincidence.
So can I just jump in with a question?
Sure.
There's a question which I'm going to rephrase a little bit just to make it clearer. So when did you start making dummies? I think that's in general. This is making dummies or these maquettes always part of your work process, or depends on the type of the book or content and so on? So is the dummy a must for you?
That's a good question. I'm going to hand that to Mike.
For this project, it was a must. I mean, it's not something we always do. I mean, a lot of it's done all digitally. I mean, we'll print out guides, but for this project, it was about playing, and we wanted something more physical. You know, we wanted something we can play with and move around and glue in, because we knew that was going to be the aesthetic in the end. We've been printing probably for the last 2 projects, even Abandoned Moments, that I think we did a little printing of images and rearranging. I mean, there's something different when you have it in your hands than when you move it around the screen. You can be a little more free, you know? So for this project, building was a big part of it. And I think in the next section, we're actually going to show some videos of us in the back, just folding paper, printing on paper, putting images different places. Oh yeah, there we go. That was a big part of it. The actual construction was a big part of the project.
And I will say, to answer that question in a different way, is that for those who are interested in making books of their work or anyone's work, you know, you definitely have to put a maquette together, not only for the reasons Mike says, which is to sort of really feel the thingness of it and be able to play and touch and move it around, but ultimately, if you are going to try to sell it to a publisher, then you generally, I don't think it's enough to just send like a PDF, like a digital version. You definitely have to have that. Absolutely. I think in the age we're living in, you know, ideally you have a great digital version of a book idea or a book project, but you also create a maquette so that you have something physical to show. And hopefully once the pandemic is past and we can all have meetings face to face again more fluidly and consistently, then that would really become important to have a physical thing, a maquette to show.
Yeah, and we didn't have one with our sequence at all. Like, we made this before we had even narrowed down the images. We knew the cover, we were really set on that. We knew the back cover as well. This was just like sort of for us to wrap our minds around like how this thing was going to open. How is it going to lay flat? Is it even going to, like, you know, just the physical properties of it. It's like an absolute necessity for us. And also, you know, we started, once we realized we were going to get the zines printed elsewhere, we just kind of shopped around for a little bit. We found this publisher we really liked in Minneapolis, and
A printer,
sorry. And we couldn't start building the cover until we received, you know, the first couple copies, because we had no idea how thick they were going to be, how's the smoothness of the paper, right? So I'll kind of hand this back over to Mike, and you can see I'll flip through these images of our behind the scenes process.
Yeah, so that was like a pause. Like, once we designed the inside books, we had an idea of what the cover would look like, but we didn't really want to go be too precise until we actually got the books back and we could play with them. Yeah, we spent days just folding paper, all different types of paper. Like, it was literally that mechanical, just in the back room, cutting paper with a razor blade and a straight edge, folding, trying to figure out tolerances, gluing it, double-siding printing. I mean, we use just a regular Epson printer, and there's not really commercially available like Epson printer paper that can print double-sided. So we're printing on an uncoated back of matte paper. So just to try to get the print quality to be decent was a lot of time. And we're feeding paper into printers. It's getting garbled. There was a lot of just mechanical work of trying to get everything to line up on a machine that wasn't really made for that, and materials that weren't made for that. And we went through a lot of different setups in putting the book together. We had the design, we knew what the final was supposed to look like, but we had some leeway and the physical properties of it and how it would come together. I think this is our glue experiment where we decided we were going to glue paper together, and quickly decided that was insane for the amount of time we would have to sit there with brayers pushing paper together. But that's part of it. You kind of fail until you make something, you know, like, if you're not failing, you're not creating anything. So we didn't, you know, 90% of the time it didn't work and it looked bad, but you got like 5% there. And we just kept going and going and going and just rewriting the process, the steps, and how we did it each time. So we could just continue back, iterate through it again, until we got to a point where it magically just pops and it works. That's usually how things like this come together.
It also helps that you're a master at what you do, Mike.
Sure, that's a great compliment. Thank you.
Well, so here's a question from Gianna to Ed. Would you do a 7 Insider talk on your archiving system?
Oh,
yeah,
that'd be fun.
Anyway, sorry.
I would do anything for Gianna. Absolutely.
There you go,
Ed Kashi brain.
Yeah, we could talk for an hour about keywords and metadata.
Oh,
but I love what Mike said earlier about like the failing process. I mean, we failed left and right. I mean, we thought we knew what we were doing, and then we tried it, and we did not know what we were doing, and we got really upset. And then we came in the next day and we figured something else out. And this, like, you know, we had no idea how the paper was going to react. It was random paper that had yellowed and been sitting in the closet. We didn't even know what it was. We didn't know what the properties of it were until we started folding it.
Yeah.
And we started gluing in. So
and then Mike would have to come up with new profiles for
Yeah.
printing as well.
Sorry, so how long between those first pictures on Instagram where you were sort of testing the grounds, how long between that and final product, how long it took you?
When you say like when we first did the Instagram campaign last year, you mean?
Yeah, until so it took you like almost, how long it took you from that to the book, zine?
About a year, right?
A
Yeah,
year?
a little over a year probably. From like initially narrowing down and making an archive to now, probably a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But from the point of where we started the Instagram campaign, and then I can't remember who said it, it was like, we should do a zine of this.
Mhm.
That was probably 6 to 8 months, maybe,
Yeah.
from like the inception of the idea to actually physically creating one.
Yeah, here's a video of us like actually gluing. You could see that we were printing the cover out, and this is just testing how the books are going to hold up. You know, they're like a shiny sort of, not shiny, but like they have a sheen to them, a glossy sort of
Finish.
yeah, and they're soft. They slide around. So this is another example of how we had trial and error over and over and over again.
And thank goodness you guys are patient.
Mhm.
You know, I mean,
You
I think
wouldn't-
that's a key.
You wouldn't think how much time it takes to fold the spine correctly. And you just think you just fold the spine. If you want to do something perfect, it takes hours.
Yeah. So this is a very sort of sped up video that will just show really, it's like 30 seconds, but you can see the final product of how, and we were really excited to get to this point when we made our first one, because we know, like, you know, Ziyah had touched on this before, the PDF comes like no way close to like representing what the book looks like, right? It's like even sending someone the PDF, it's like there's a caveat here. We know this isn't how it actually reads. So this is just to show the physical.
And it was even fun just putting this stuff together, like these, whatever you call it, kind of like not marketing materials, but just you know, documentation of the process. Even that was fun.
Yeah, and then there's sort of this next component that none of us were like excited to get to, which was like, well, how much are we going to charge for, you know, like now we gotta, do we want to sell this? What do we do now? You know, so discussing like the limited edition and
this is the part where you don't listen to what I did. No.
But now that we look, sorry to jump in. Now that we look through the pictures, there's few questions, but actually few people are asking the same thing. So which is kind of interesting. So so here's the question. So do you think your photography has changed appreciably from this early period?
Oh wow, absolutely. Which of course these questions have nothing to do with this book, but oh my gosh, I've grown and evolved so much. Besides the fact that more than half of what I do now is documentary filmmaking. So it's been over 20 years that I've been working in motion and sound. So for me, my photography has evolved to use way less artificial light in my work, much more, you know, hardcore documentary work, not very little assignment work. So, you know, when I do photograph now, it's more on my own terms. It's projects I want to work on, issues and things that I believe in and I'm committed to. But having said that, I mean, I still, when I do, you know, commissioned work and all, I would just say that I'm working more freely than when I was younger. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, and I'm happy to you know, to answer more if any of you have a more specific question. But simply put, my photography has dramatically grown and changed from you know, the 1980s. I would hope so. Oh my God.
As it should change. I just wanted to go through as many questions as possible so we don't leave anything unanswered. So there's a question now that people have actually, first of all, thank you very much for showing exactly the whole process. We don't get to see that often. It's usually just like, oh, here's a fancy book. So I'm just going to read a question from Ted. It sounds like an incredibly expensive and time-consuming process for little financial return. Is the break-even factor part of the decision to publish, or do you just say, screw it, it's getting published whatever the cost or loss?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, it's the screw it answer.
Okay, go ahead.
But again, I want to emphasize something, and this is relative to who you are, where you're at in your life, whatever, financially, family, no family, all the different aspects that make our lives what they are. And the financial aspect is a part of it. Is that what I've learned from 40 years of doing this is that if you don't invest in your own work, if you don't invest in yourself, you might never get anywhere. And that's how you grow. And that's how you have to take risks in life. I cannot tell you how many projects I have worked on where I have done an initial investment, whatever it was, the amount was, and either I didn't break even, if you want to look at it that way, ever, or it took years to break even. But by creating that work, it opened up all these other opportunities. So I'd like you to think of it in this way. There's kind of the internal process of, why do you do this? What are you trying to accomplish? And the creative drive that, for me at least, is unquenchable. And then there's the more practical side of, I can't do these things forever. I can't do these things all the time, otherwise, I would go broke. But so it's about finding that balance between, making sure you create work so you move ahead and you grow, which also opens up new opportunities to make money, right? And I think that's it. That was a rather long-winded answer. I hope in there were the nuggets that made sense. And again, I'm happy with follow-up questions, because I know this is really important, and it's not fun. Like, it's not a joke that not everybody can invest that kind of money. So it all is within. It's relative. It's relative to where you're at in your life. My kids are grown and launched and have jobs. So I've passed through the insane, as an American, the insane money it costs to educate your children in this country. So, I'm in a position where there's certain exorbitant finances that my wife and I, Julie and I, had to encounter, get through. So, I have a freer hand in that sense than I might have even just 5 years ago. But like I said, it's different for everybody.
Brenda, do you have, is there anything that you didn't show us that you wanted to show? Because I would still like to go through a few questions, but I still don't want to miss anything that you have prepared. So
sure. Yeah, there's just one little last part, and it sort of goes hand in hand with this sort of behind the scenes component. We had just a gut feeling that we wanted to document everything that we were doing, because again, it was experimental. We didn't know what it was going to look like, and we just wanted it for posterity. And so we had all this content to work with. I just want to add, sorry to interrupt. I want to add one more thing, because actually the question about money and all that was right at the point where we were going to talk about why we've priced it at the way we did. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of relevant. I'm so sorry. But we priced it at $33. As when I told Julie, my wife, that she didn't hit me, but she was like, you're a fool. Anyway, but the reason that I priced it at that rate is because I want it to be accessible to students. I want it to be accessible to people who aren't collectors and have lots of money. Because again, from the very beginning that I discovered and fell in love with photography, it was, my ethos is about, you want to get the work out there and share it with people. And it's not about it being precious. I'm happy if other people decide my work is precious and, ascribe large values to it. And thankfully that does happen at times for me. But ultimately this was about, how do we get something out there that is a real sincere labor of love for us,
and expresses a very important part of my life so that it can get into the hands of as many people as possible. And the price isn't like a killer for, students, young people, so forth. Sorry.
That's all right. So just, yeah, thank you. When we were figuring out how we wanted to market this, we were excited to show like what our process was. We wanted to show the behind the scenes. We had all this work. So kind of in the ethos of Cali Years being this total stray from the norm for Ed, for all of us, this experimental is the best word that I have for it. We decided to approach Instagram in that same way. This was like new for all of us too. It took me like an hour to make my first 10-second Instagram reel. It was total hell. And then I liked it by this time I made a second one. So we had fun with it, and I just wanted to show those, and that's the last bit, Ziyah, for us. So this was our very first one. And then I'm just gonna play them. There's really nothing to be said.
Although the music does progress.
Yeah, it gets better. So Ed really wanted to use this next song, so we incorporated it for him.
All the leaves are brown, and the sky is gray,
So
It's a classic. Come on.
I think we have time for one more question, which I think is a very, very nice way to end this. So you have another book that just came out by Kerer Verlag, and so the question is basically, can you talk a little bit about the difference between this book and The Abandoned Moments?
Yes, absolutely. So Abandoned Moments is, I've been probably 10 years, cogitating, working on that. That is, The Abandoned Moments is a almost philosophical statement I am making about an approach to photography. That is something that I discovered as a photo student in London in 1977 when I didn't know what I was doing. I was playing around with flash and film and blah, blah, blah. And then over the years, it's something that developed into a part of my photographic approach. So Abandoned Moments, as the subtitle is, a love letter to photography. And it's a different kind of compilation of my work that is drawn from, all over the world, maybe over 30 countries, very serious. A lot of it is very serious. There's actually some imagery in Abandoned Moments that's in Cali Years as well. And, and it's a proper book, it's not handmade. It's, Kerer, the German publisher, who did a beautiful job, published it. And so, yeah, it's very different in nature. I don't want to say like one is more serious than the other, because they're both my babies, but Abandoned Moments is something that I hope will actually contribute to the conversation about the history of photography.
Thank you very much. I think we covered it all. Thank you everyone for joining us. Ed, Brenda, Michael, thank you so much for this really in depth. I really enjoyed it. It's really made me really smile to see the whole process. I know it was difficult, but it just looks so beautiful to see how the thing is made. I'm gonna be free to share again the link to the book, and I'm gonna have to apologize if we missed any of the questions. Thanks everyone. This, as you know, has been recorded, so you will also get the link to recorded sessions if you want to revisit it. And again, everyone, thank you very much. Stay safe, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Ziyah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Take care,
everyone.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Take care.